Today on the Being Whole podcast, we welcome Rachael Kay Albers. Rachael is a creative director and brand strategist for businesses that want to burn the rulebook. When she's not working with rulebreakers and renegades to set fire to the box instead of thinking inside of it, she writes and educates about the intersection of branding, pop culture, tech, and identity. She hosts Marketing Muckraking, the podcast that asks us, what is brand culture doing to us? This conversation is incredibly validating and eye-opening. Let's not waste any more time and just dive on in. Okay, Rachael, if I'm being honest with you, I honestly don't know where to start because there are so many things I want to talk about. So first of all, welcome. I'm grateful that you are here and I'm so appreciative of your time. Hello.
Who knows where to start, right? Just start in the middle and unravel from there. We're just going to unravel together.
Yeah.
That's my life philosophy.
So I actually found you through an internet wormhole. I was searching for something one day about if I should join some online course or something like that. And I found an article that you wrote. And then I just went down the rabbit hole of reading about you, found you on Instagram, and have seen so many of the different things that you've done through different businesses and things. And so why don't you just tell us a little bit about kind of what you have going on, all of the different pieces, or start wherever you want, honestly.
What do I have going on? The better question is, what don't I have going on?
That really does seem to be the better question.
Right? So I am a creative director and brand strategist gone wild for businesses that burn the rule book. I run a branding and marketing company for people who are running businesses at the very same time that they're asking the question, what is capitalism doing to us? What is brand culture doing to us? Right? And so that's why I say brand strategist gone wild, because the gone wild part is over the last 13 years of running this business while also walking the tightrope of my own political beliefs, my own, just ideological, my values. It's become increasingly more challenging to buy in to the very industry that I work in, right?
Yeah.
And so, yes, you found my wormhole. This is what I should do as a course. I should do like how to create your own internet wormhole, like rabbit holes in 3 easy steps. But you found one of my wormholes that kind of came out of a time where I was very publicly burning it all down in the name of being more honest about my understanding of the harms of the marketing industry, the very industry that I work in. And so that's kind of where you find me, is asking this question, what is brand culture doing to us, while I still am running a business in this? And that's, partially due to my belief, well, we all have to exist and survive within capitalism, right? Like there's no wormhole that takes us out of here.
Right.
Yet, but I'm working on it. No, kidding. Well, kind of, sure, yes. But I mean, there isn't an industry that escapes capitalism's harms, in my opinion. So it's more about, how do we navigate, what compromises do we make, versus I'm not a proponent of I don't believe that there's a do no harm way to exist in this world today. So then it's about, how do we mitigate more harm? How do we diminish and decrease the harm and the impact, the negative impact that we as participants in this system, forced to participate in the system, have? That's the space you find me in today. It's a wild terrain.
It is. And that's something where I'm very new to kind of understanding and learning that. I transitioned out of academia and have been in academics for a long time. And to help people, I wanted to help people. Why are you a teacher? Because I love my students. I want to help them. And when I started my business, it was really because my students were like, you need to help more people. You can reach more people. I was like, you're right. This is what I need to do. And so I was like, I just want to help people. And apparently that's not how this works. I learned very quickly, okay, great. You want to help people. Who do you want to help? Who's your ideal client avatar? Do you have a nurture sequence? Do you have this? And I was like, whoa, what's your personal brand? Where's your logo? What's your mission statement? And it became this space where I got caught up in this machine over the last 2 years, almost, of not me really falling into it, but more doing exactly what you're saying, being like, if this is what this looks like, how do I fit into this? Where do I go? How do I show up as myself? If myself might get canceled because of what I said, how do I feel authentic in the fact that I really want to help people while at the same time I do need to make a living? So I do kind of got to ask some people for money, right? But then it's all of the things that you said, being so caught up in it and not wanting to also then use practices that are manipulative or that are hurtful or that are just lies, honestly. And so I think that's where, when I found you, it's been a while now, it was just a refreshing statement. What you were saying was on one side, like really depressing, because I was like, yeah, this is what it is. But it was also refreshing and gave me hope, because I'm like, at least she's having the conversation. At least we can start here and look at what some of these things really are and what this online space feels like and what capitalism is doing to us all at the same time that we are buying into it, as you said.
Because there's nothing else because we don't have a choice, right? And I think one of the things that I am really excavating and deconstructing as I do, I'm all about historical research and really understanding how did we get here, as a culture, as a civilization, et cetera, et cetera. I think one of the things that I'm pushing up against, and this is not a popular opinion, is there's a lot of messaging out there that's like, okay, so you see the harms of capitalism, or you see the harms of the online marketing industry, or whatever, fill in the blank. Here, come and follow me. I'm going to show you the ethical / do no harm way to still make $1 bazillion. Like, we're going to get filthy rich, but we're going to do it using good, clean fun, right?
Yeah.
And while I do think it is possible to be profitable while also creating a business that is in alignment with your values, part of my outlook is based on economics, based on my understanding of history, based on all of the ways that these things intersect to become this historical moment that we're living through, is what you said about helping people. Like, oh wait, that's not the thing. That the more you truly want to meaningfully help people, the more ethical you become in doing that, the more you have to make peace with the idea of taking a pay cut to a certain degree, in the sense that ethical marketing comes with, like I said, compromises, and many of those compromises are going to be in terms of profit. Like, there's such a big emphasis on scaling one to many, right? Like, people are like, okay, I've worked with a lot of businesses that they're coaches or they're doctors or they're healers or they're therapists, or they're doing some sort of, like, they're doing the work of the helper, right? And so they get to a certain point in their practice where they're like, okay, I've developed a formula, I've developed a framework, a practice, and now I want to be able to help lots and lots of people, because, the one-to-one model is limited. And there are lots of ways that you can take your experience, take your knowledge, take your body of work, and translate it to a larger audience than just doing one-to-one. And at the same time, though, typically when you do scale a solution like that, the impact on each individual person is reduced. So this would be an example of, like, we've got people out here just like with a megaphone saying, you've just got to scale your thing to serve thousands, millions of people and make this huge impact. Well, there then becomes challenges around how do you make sure that the teachings are truly reaching each individual person. And in my opinion, endless scaling, endless profit, and also meaningful support and change and help for each individual person that's consuming the information are not entirely compatible. There is, like, okay, one way to scale one to many, and is to write a book, for example. But what a lot of folks in this space do is they don't just write a book, then they create like a $2,000 course that they want to sell to hundreds of thousands of people, and their profits are growing up, while we know that the statistics around, like, people finishing courses, and the experience that people get from a course, especially with that price tag, doesn't typically match the value that's going back to the course creator versus the value going to the student. So all of this is kind of a convoluted way of saying the capitalist system is not set up for us to profit by helping people meaningfully. In fact, it's set up for us to extend people's pain as long as we can so that we have repeat buyers. If you actually meaningfully solve a problem quickly, well, then now you're going to need to replace that customer with a brand new customer that has those pain points. It's much more in the interest of our economic system to keep us as ongoing, constant, loyal customers and buyers. So I guess all of this is to say, if your goal is to run an ethical business and truly help people, then I think you need to consciously uncouple from the vision that this goal is can be held in tandem with endless profits, endless growth, endless scaling. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, and I am a teacher. So basically like any pay is going to be more than what I was making. So like in my perspective, I was like, I'm not even trying to look at the buckets full of money that some of these other people are, in theory, I'm saying everyone can have, right? But it's exactly everything that you said. I don't think it should be an unpopular opinion. I happen to really resonate with it. And I would love to share that opinion with others in terms of, it is hard to scale and then still help people. And yes, you can grow your team. And yes, you can have all these people and you can have Facebook moderators or group. But as somebody who's been in several of those programs where then there are hundreds of people or that's what they're selling, it isn't the same. And that's where even kind of dipping my toe into some of these programs, it was like, no, I'm going to cap it at 10 people or what have you. Because I know like classroom management, like what I can give people and what I can handle. Right. And even then I always question, okay, what am I doing? What does this look like? And I think that one of the things too, that, I've had conversations with others thinking about these types of things is you start to see like, okay, but who's really making all of this money with these people? A lot of times it is the online marketers or the people who are like, you can have this entrepreneurial job. You should go step into this. But the people who are actually doing the courses and doing the things like, it remains to be seen for me, I guess, like what really happens to them after these kind of promises and things like that. What's your take on that?
I mean, one of my favorite things to say is the only overnight success in business is the business selling overnight success. And so I completely agree with the idea that it's almost always like the big, massive success stories almost always come from people emulating a model similar to the one they bought into, meaning like, okay, I've got a marketer or a coach who's selling me how I can be a successful marketer and a coach. And then I become a coach for marketing and coaching, right? Like, and it's that versus the less frequent success story is the tiny little niche business that takes this course and then their revenue explodes and now they're a multi-gazillionaire. And even that type of success, which does happen, is reflective of, you kind of filling a blue ocean, right? And so that's not available to all business owners, right? Which kind of goes back to like, why do I have a problem with this economic system? Because I get a lot of responses all the time, which is like, well, capitalism might suck, but it's the best we've ever had. So what are you going to do about it? And I'm like, okay, jury's out on whether that's true. I don't know. What are the standards for saying it's the best? That's always my question when people say anything is the best, like any country is the best or any, whatever. But beyond that, my where I take that is, okay, let's just say it is. Let's just say this current economic system that we're living in is the best we've ever had. And at the same time, we know that it doesn't provide for a majority or even half of the world's people to live well or even meaningfully change their economic circumstances. That is just the truth. It doesn't. If every single person in the world woke up tomorrow and said, I'm going to hustle for the rest of my days until I reach the top of the mountain, until I reach the peak of the economic Everest, the system doesn't provide for every single person to achieve that. So for me, that's an inherent flaw. And the other side of that is, okay, let's say it's the best. We as humans are capable and have done so many incredible things throughout human history. If this is the best, now the question becomes, how do we do better? How do we do a lot better? I think we can. But, going back to that concept that if everyone can't live well, And if these promises aren't available to us all, if only a select few of us can take the course and become filthy rich or do some other route to becoming wildly successful, and then that depends on a great percentage of people making considerably less or living considerably less well so that just a few of us can live very well, well, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Well, that's not good enough for me. Does that make sense?
No, it absolutely makes sense. I mean, it continues to create that divide. It continues to, I think what's hard for me about a lot of it as well is the hope that people are given. And then if things don't work out, the guilt and shame that they're left with.
Yes.
That is what is just, and myself, I felt that included, it's like, I guess I'm just not vibrating high enough, or I guess I just didn't, believe because they manifested, it's like prosperity gospel. And it's just, and so then I've seen way too many people, my friends, people I know, and then just random strangers on the internet that I've met throughout this journey who are like, the shame that they feel because they didn't do it. I did all the homework, or I showed up to the calls,
right,
and I must not have done this right. Let me try to sell again, as their own friends and families are getting like annoyed with them for continually trying to sell. And because you're just like, and so I've seen people lose like kind of their self-confidence, lose sight of, because they are wanting something that they feel should be attainable. And then they're told if they're not getting it, that clearly it's your messaging. It's your email didn't have the right emoji.
They think I'm not meant to be in business. This is a sign that I'm not meant to be in business. And what it's really a sign of is the system can only take so many success stories. That's the truth. And what's really interesting, if you did find me through a wormhole / rabbit hole / just a hole of any kind, then you may have, some of my content is spoken to, especially in like the online marketing coaching space. So many of the folks at the top have built into their models, built into their programs, built into their courses, built into their masterminds, hidden legal disclaimers, non-disparagement clauses like, okay, if anybody listening has heard of Marie Forleo's B School, there is a clause when you sign up for this online course, when you're clicking the little terms and conditions button, without knowing you are clicking and agreeing to, you will not leave a negative review on that course. And this is taught by many of the leaders at the top of, this is what you should embed into your like kind of just boilerplate, like, I'm buying a workshop for $300 and I'm not even realizing that I'm signing that I won't ever say anything negative to my friends on my blog. I can't write a review. They can come and they can theoretically come after me. Although what they do is they sick their legal dogs on someone. This is a fraudulent legal. This is fraudulent in this context, right? Like there is a legal right to create and share honest reviews. But when you've got some big, powerful, rich, kind of scary leader sending a lawyer to you saying you need to take this down, or this is a cease and desist, or we're gonna sue you, typically the instinct is to back off and say, okay, wait, I don't have the energy or the money or the knowledge or whatever to fight this. But what happens then, you combine this with the lack of negative reviews with the big kind of overblown success stories, which are always tucked into the fine print. This result's not typical, right? Like you see the headlining testimonials on a sales page, or you hear all of the people singing the praises of something, often because they get an affiliate kickback for doing that. And then you combine that with the lack of any negative feedback, which is partially due to like legal pressure and fear. And then you add in the kind of peer pressure of so many folks kind of walking through these worlds and getting ensnared in this. And then it's like, it feels like everyone has done this. And if no one's saying anything negative and all of the success stories are so glitzy and so shiny, then there comes like a gaslighting that happens out of that, which is, oh, no. This isn't that this teaching maybe not working for everyone. This isn't that necessarily the teacher might have overpromised something, or the marketer may have overpromised something that isn't actually a realistic result for all students, even if they do the work, even if they do, all of the things. It's me. I'm the problem. I'm crazy. And if there is a sense of like, I think maybe I was oversold something, I think maybe this isn't worth all the hype, you get all those factors that I just mentioned, the lack of negative reviews, the kind of like cult like, massive group of people singing the praises, the exaggerated 1% testimonials. And then there's this effect of, I can't trust my own intuition here on this. I can't trust my own knowledge, my own experience. I must be wrong.
I'm sure if your journey has looked anything like mine with courses and coaches over the last couple of years, this episode will make you feel like you are valid in your frustration and lack of progress. I'd love to hear one takeaway from you over in my Instagram DM. Reach out at Dr. Cassandra LeClaire so we can connect. Also, if you've been burned in your relationships and are having trouble with setting or communicating your boundaries, I'm here to help you learn to do all of that and more within your personal or professional life. DM me the word boundary to chat about which service may be best for you. Now let's get back to the episode with Rachael.
I must be nuts. I must be the problem. It's me, not them, right? And not that I'm saying it's always them either. And yet, like we've discussed, the system doesn't provide for all people to be wildly wealthy and, 0 to a billion, 0 to 6 figures, 0 to 7 figure success stories. That's not how this economic system is set up,
Well, and I think that just thank you for being so open and having this conversation, because not only I was in that position, I spent so much money, and everything that you said, I went back to counseling because I was like, what is happening here? I don't trust myself. And especially with me, I have a history of some trauma that has already caused me to trust, have some trust issues and not trust my own feelings and things like that. To the point where my counselor was like, your CPTSD is activated over this. And another friend of mine that I talked to, she's like, they are gaslighting you. And we had it was like this experience of, whoa, this is what's happening. This is real. And, then I'm just on the end of it. I can work through it and I can take care of my nervous system and I have access to counseling. Great. But then now I have this debt that I have to pay off as a result of like that experience. Right. And I think, for my situation, fortunately, I do have, I have credentials I can fall back on. I have other things I can do a lot. Right. However, not everyone is in that position either. And not everyone. And so just even recognizing, like after that happened to me, and I was like, okay, I feel like I'm a smart person. And I went back and I asked all the right questions. I did all the right things. I did. And so really reminding myself, no, you did the right thing of trusting, of asking. It was just that this machine, this thing is not designed to really be what it says it is. And so I just think it's really refreshing that you are talking about that, because unfortunately, throughout the last few years of going through some different programs and working with a few coaches myself, the people that I know who've done it have more of the stories like my own and not the stories that you're speaking of. In fact, people are then creating their other groups to like complain about the group because, or what have you. So I think that it's getting, more talked about more and more, but not in the spaces then when you're going, like you're saying, when you're going to sign up for these things, or when you're seeing people's flashy marketing and things, you don't find those negative reviews, you don't find things. And I think also too, at a time when so many people have had financial devastation over the last few years, so many people have been searching for something more meaningful and have thought, a lot of people pinned like their emotional hopes on this too, not just their financial hopes. Yeah. Right. So I think that just, what is that like though for you in terms of you're out here, this is your industry, you're trying to open up this conversation. I can't imagine it's well received by everyone.
No, of course it's not. So like I mentioned, I had my little big burn it all down moment where in the midst of the pandemic last year in 2021, I started what was called, like, it was an experiment on my stories. I had kind of hit a wall of burnout. I was in year 12 of running my business. And as much as I knew firsthand, because I'll tell you what, as a brand strategist, a marketing strategist, I myself actually haven't taken most of a couple, one or two of these kind of big name, brand name courses, which is good, by the way, because that means I am to a degree legally protected because, I never signed anything. I never clicked any terms and conditions, right? But what I'll tell you is most of my clients have. So I have an in-depth understanding of how most of these programs work and what their teachings are and what the content is, because my clients, my hundreds of clients over the years, have gone through nearly all of them and then come to me and been like, all right, here, we're going to take this person's funnel and I need your help to apply it. And so it gave me this behind the scenes look at all of the strategies and the formulas that are being sold. And so I had this idea at the beginning of 2021 as I was experiencing my own burnout, because there was a period of time when so here I am on behalf of my clients implementing these kind of master formulas and blueprints and everything. And in the early days of my business, I too, despite having a traditional marketing background and study, thought that there was something wrong with me. I'm like, man, I must be a bad steward of B school because I'm applying the things that my clients are telling me to apply because that's what they're taking from these programs. And it's just not working, right? And it wasn't until I had, done that on, dozens of occasions with all these different business owners while interacting at conferences and as a speaker and as a workshop leader with eventually thousands of people who, like you said, most of them shared the non-success stories with me versus the success stories. It was a very rare occasion that I met a wild success story. And when I did, it was typically because they became an affiliate for the course or the program or the mastermind that they had bought into, right? So it wasn't even just that the teachings helped them. It was that selling the teachings to their own following helped them. So I hit a wall of burnout where I'm like, I can't work, right? Like I need to stop. I had to take a sabbatical. And at the beginning of the sabbatical, I had this idea, you know what I'm going to do just for fun? Like I'm going to try a wild experiment. I am going to show up on my Instagram every day and I'm going to teach everything that I know about online business. No opt-in, no funnel. You don't even have to follow me. You could just go on my account and watch my stories every day. And I'm going to teach everything that I know about business for free. And this was, talk about helping people just to help them. That was kind of the vision behind it. And it was also, like I said, an experiment and like just totally setting fire to some of the rules, right? You got to build a list. You got to put people through a nurture sequence. You got to have that, you got to have 7 different, levers that they're pulling so that, you can psychologically get them into your next upsell over and over again. But as I was doing this experiment, it started to come out in my content that I started to share more honestly about, like I said, my observations and my understanding of how these different programs worked, about how these different leaders worked. And this kind of converged with, I was going through a divorce. Speaking of trauma, I was like, becoming estranged from my family because there's that whole fun, part of my history as well. All of this was happening at the same time. And I am just like full of fire. And so Free School, this experiment that I started of teaching everything I knew about online business and my stories, turned into burning down my whole life and my business for public consumption. And I was naming names because one of the reasons I did that was I have spent years talking about the sleazy, slimy marketing practices, but not naming names, doing it in the form of comedy, doing it in my content. And people would be like, yeah, I hate it. That's so bullshit. But then they wouldn't actually connect the practices to some of these big industry leaders. They were like, well, that's great, but that's not this person that I love and follow so much. So the naming of the brand names, the personal brand names, was important for that. So I started being honest. I started naming names. I started blowing the whistle, if you will, because I've heard so many, I know the dirty behind the scenes stories behind the glitzy marketing campaigns, behind the big 7-figure launches, behind these supposed success stories. I know the truth very well. Well, to say that this wasn't well received would be probably an understatement, right? Like inadvertently, while starting this experiment and burning it down, I did burn my relationships. I burned, this lost me business partners. Not partners, but business colleagues, right? This lost me referral connections. This lost me a lot of the industry esteem that I had built up over the years, partially because I was kissing the industry's ass and I was tiptoeing around the truth. And I would talk about something without talking about something, and therefore I was kind of like a good girl in that way. I burned that all down too. And I did burn myself in the process, right? Like last year was like, after 12 years in business of, yes, I had, experienced growth pretty much every year. It was like my worst year in business almost since the very beginning, right? And I got myself into some very hot water economically, which wasn't the goal. It wasn't like what I was trying to do, but it's what happened, right? So it wasn't well received, and yet it's funny that I called the whole experiment free school, because what it did was free me to really fully dial into what you talk about purpose, you talk about meaning, to what I really, I've asked myself for years, how the hell did an anti-capitalist, like, activist like me end up in freaking branding and marketing? Arm of this economic system. And this is why, because there are so few people in this industry who are understanding how we got here from a historical perspective, who are tracing back our current, what we kind of just see as the rules, tracing that back to, how did all of this get started? How did this fuel our current system of inequality? What do we have to do with this? These questions to me are much more interesting than, like, how do I get more people on my list, and there's plenty of people doing that, but I don't think that's the change that we need. So it freed me, because as long as I was trying to kiss the ass of the industry, as long as I was trying to be the good girl with a wild side, but still kind of playing by the rules, I was not ever going to get to the place that I am now in terms of asking that question, what is brand culture doing to us?
Yep.
And if you understand marketing history, you understand social and political history as well, because those things go together. Marketing and advertising history has shaped politics, has shaped culture, has shaped our sense of identity, both as individuals and a collective. That's what I'm interested in at this point. And that's what a lot of the people that stuck around, or that have found me in the wormholes or the rabbit holes ever since, are interested in as well, while also juggling the reality of, we all have to pay our bills in this freaking system, right? We can't just skip out to some sort of, like, not an anti-capitalist utopia somewhere. That doesn't exist. But is it possible to run a business while continuing to deepen our understanding of what brand culture is doing to us, so we can not just be more ethical business owners and marketers of our businesses, but so we can be more conscious consumers?
Yes.
Of, like, we're all experiencing marketing all the time, right? Whether you're a marketer or a marketed, becoming a more conscious agent of your own life experience, which is an experience at this current moment that is completely absorbed and intertwined with marketing, right? Absolutely. Like, marketing is all around us all the time. It shapes our world. So that's the short answer, JK.
No, I mean, just even like what you're saying, just being more conscious consumers. I think that, from what I've been reading from you and everything you've put out there, that's what's helped me in so many of the emails or the different things I've gotten. I've noticed things differently. But even from my professor life, one of my classes I always teach is communication and gender. And we talk about the media there. We have a whole thing that we're kind of unraveling, what does this look like? And it's getting that understanding, like you're saying, of all the ways that you're being marketed to, understanding then what that looks like, seeing the different appeals that are coming through. And I think that that's where too, it's tied so much into our emotionality, obviously, but that's where with people, it feels like the stakes are higher over the last few years. Again, as people have lost more and are searching more and just want to find that there's something out there to save them or help them after everything that has happened, right? Mm-hmm. So in some ways, it feels like it's increasingly dangerous, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it, in terms of, we have this mental health crisis, we see all these things, and then yet, am I blowing things out of proportion here? And
no, you're just speaking to, yes, you're correct. I mean, it's like, at the same time that we're living in a historical pattern, like if you go back, for example, to the 1920s, when Napoleon Hill was in his heyday and he wrote the book Think and Grow Rich, and he was peddling this idea that that everyone could escape poverty simply by having the right attitude and mindset and just deciding to be wealthy, right? So that's an example of those were hard times that he was selling this message within. Like you go into the 30, you get to the Great Depression. It was a rough, bleak time. And yet, so while we're reliving a historical pattern here, at the very same time, what's different about today is that yesterday's consumers were pretty much only receiving messages. They weren't actively contributing or creating the messages themselves. But today, in 2022, in this time that we're living in, we are all, creating our own media. And we're living in this time of the age of the personal brand where we're being encouraged to commodify our very selves, turn ourselves into products. And we have the media in our hands to create our marketing campaigns around our very lives. So this is what makes it feel more dangerous to me, not just because so many people are desperate for an escape from the pain of capitalism and its realities, but also because now, like never before, we have the ability to essentially market our very selves, not only to the world around us, but back to ourselves. I mean, you talk about social media and causing a sense of disconnection, a mental health crisis and all of that. We've got people, and I mean, God, I am even one of them because there's certain filters that I just love just so I can escape the reality of my own aging face. But, you start looking in the mirror at yourself and you don't recognize yourself anymore because you filtered yourself into oblivion to the point that you've forgotten what your own face looked like. You have marketed a different face to yourself and to the world. That's what makes it dangerous, if you ask me.
Oh my gosh, when you put it that way, you have marketed a different face to yourself and to the world. I mean, like I never really thought about it, and that's so true. You think about people presenting a different life, but it is what you're saying. You're marketing this other persona, this other appearance that then other people believe. And then if you don't feel it, you start to feel the shit. It all comes back to me then how we're all feeling terrible too, in terms of what this causes or what this can be. And I think that's what for me is just, you spin out, you're like, okay, now what should I do? And unfortunately, then a lot of times the answer that we think of is another product or another service or something to help. Yeah. Right.
That's how they get you. That's how, isn't that beautiful? Isn't it beautiful? I mean, the system is really beautifully designed to do its job, which is to sell us shit constantly, evermore, every day, all the time. Right. But it's not designed to help us. Like getting back to what we were talking about in the very beginning, it's meant to give us an illusion that if I'm going to just only buy this. If I only buy this, then this is going to help me. And then you buy that and it doesn't help you. And so now there's something else to fill the hole inside of you. So in that way, the system is running impeccably well, but not for itself, for its own growth and constant expansion, not for our betterment, not for our constant growth and expansion. So that's the very bleak. And yet, even having this conversation, just like you, I find myself all the time being like, what do I do? I'm like depressed. I'm depressed. I mean, doing the research that I'm doing, like seeing the world through my lens, it's not a fun ride. It's not. And then I find myself being like, okay, what am I going to go buy today to feel bad? I'm going to go eat something. I'm going to go to the store and like find something to fill the hole. And then I'm like, what is going on? I mean, of course I know what's going on, but it doesn't change the fact that that's how I've been trained. Right. Yeah. And so, what a wild world. What a time to be alive.
I mean, I just appreciate the research and the depth that you go to as well. I hope everybody goes to follow you on Instagram, not only because it's super fun to watch you on Instagram, but because you are very educational as well. Like the mural that you just posted, that you had your dry erase mural where you had all the names in there and the history. I mean, I did not do a good job of telling anyone what I was saying. So tell us about this mural, for example, that showcases how much research you do to think about these things.
Well, this is a good example of me feeling a sense of despondency, knowing I needed to do something to ground and self-soothe, and then actively turning myself away from like going to find some sort of a consumer experience. So I was like, I gotta make something. And I've got this beautiful office that I've designed to kind of support my creativity and to support my mental health. And I've got this big empty wall that I put dry erase paint on So I can, and so I decided, okay, that now is the time I'm going to make a mural. And so the mural in the very center of it are the words "Yell Fire," which is the name of one of my favorite activist songs by Michael Franti. Go listen to that song. Always pumps me up. Like, you want some energy, you want some joy, you want some fuel for the ongoing plight and fight of being human. Listen to "Yell Fire." But I've got "Yell Fire" in the center. And that was really all I knew I wanted to do. I was like, I'm going to write "Yell Fire," and then I'm going to draw around it and make it look really cool and like collage-y. And then I decided as I was creating this, and I was listening to like history books while I did it, like, that's my toxic trait, is I never stop, hurting myself by learning about history. But I decided to fill in the color of the mural with the names of activists. And I started with women throughout history that had fought for change. And then that expanded as I started to fill in the whole mural. And so it ended up being 3,094 names of activists in over 80 countries throughout history and today. And as I'm doing it, like, I didn't want to put people's names in there. I didn't really know I'm doing like batches where I'm like researching the names and kind of trying to figure out what did they do and how did they, and I illustrate all around it with, different images that depict the type of change that these activists did, from art to science to the media to writing, protest, all of the different ways that people have fought for a better world. And the color within it, as I said, is colored in with the names of these 3,994 people. And it was, I'll tell you what, I was looking for something to ground me. I was looking for something to soothe myself. I was looking to use my hands and not be on my computer. And it did its job in that way. I was proud of myself. I'm like, I found a hobby. Like, I found something to do that isn't buying things. And it was hopeful and uplifting to breathe, and a little sad too, because I was like, damn, like all these things that these people fought for, like, we're not there yet. Like, sorry, we're still going. I'm sorry, we're trying over here. But all of these people, every single name I wrote was a life dedicated to making the world better. And it was just a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of all the people throughout history who have worked for a better world. And so it was hopeful in this age of news where we just keep hearing bad news all the time and people doing awful things. It's like, you know what? There have been and are so many people who have dedicated their lifetimes to the pursuit of justice and equity, and we are a part of that as well. And so that was my little hobby, not hobby. I don't know. It's a hobby, right?
But I mean, this podcast, is called Being Whole because it's like all the things that we have to do to keep ourselves whole. And what does that look like across context? How do we do that? And so you just gave a great example too of how this is something where you knew you needed to ground in a different way. You knew you needed something to express yourself and to feed your soul. Mm-hmm. And so finding ways that you can do that, finding ways that are, not your typical go-to, it's like expanding your toolbox, right? And I think that too, first of all, again, I need everybody to go look at this. I was trying to zoom in on the pictures and like read the names and everything. But it's that you wanted to also learn more to kind of understand where you were in it, is what it sounds like. I'm not trying to project here, but I think that that's what so many of us need in different spaces too, right? Like, okay, this is what's happening out here. Back to me, where am I all in all this? How do I feel about it? How can I go forward? How can I take what's out there and reframe and reassess for myself, especially when, you've been through burnout before, what that looks like. So you definitely don't want to go there again, right? If you can all help it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was part of it too. It was like, I could feel the rumblings. I could feel the fire, the sparks coming up, and I'm like, whoo, I got to do something. And it's probably not burn down my life on the internet. I did that, been there, done that. I did it, and you can too, but I don't recommend it. So I'm like, okay, let's channel. And yet it was important to me, like you said, like there was a self-expression piece of it, but then it was also important to me that and this is something I need to work on. You're talking about being whole, but it was, it's hard for me to spend my free time not working on something that also is an expression of my values. So this seemed to check a lot of boxes in that way. It was artistic and it was soothing and it was good for my body. And it was me taking my energy and taking my passion and doing it something that was still a reflection and an extension of my values. So that felt like a whole, talk about being whole. a whole activity to participate in. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Well, and that's what so much of this is too. That's why everybody wants like all these answers or prescriptive advice. And it's exactly what you're saying is that no, I don't have any answers. I don't have prescriptive advice. That's why I love this podcast, because it's a bunch of people sharing different things that have worked for them. Because unless we're creating our self-care out of our values, unless we're setting boundaries from our needs, we can read what everybody else wrote all day long, or we can try to employ these other tactics or do these things, but it's not going to feed us in the same way. It's not going to help us mentally in the same way. So really, even just understanding that for yourself, that about yourself. And so this is you took all these steps to care for yourself in that way. And I think that a lot of times, again, especially when we're so depleted or burnt out, we just want the answers of how to do things, as opposed to really being able then to like sit and reflect or understand, okay, those are the answers, but what are the answers for me? And how can I work through these things? Yeah.
That's it. That's like my motto, because people come to me all the time and they're like, okay, but what's the answer? I did a podcast a couple months ago that I brought back from free school. And the title of the show was something like, okay, who are the good coaches, right? And so I kind of clickbaited people a little bit, because I was like, okay, I'm going to tell you who the good coaches are, or like tune into the show to discover the good. Because people would say, okay, you've talked shit about all these people. I know this person or that brand or whatever isn't, the holy grail, if you will. So who can I trust? And I'm like, okay, tune in and I'll tell you who to trust. And then basically I gave people a framework for finding out their own definition of what a good coach is to them. Because I was like, y'all did not think I was going to give you a list. Did you? For real though? And I say on my show, which Marketing Muckraking, where I dive into this question of what is brand culture doing to us. If you're sick of business podcasts that have all the answers, well, I've got nothing but questions, because I can't give, just like you said, I can't give you the answer. I can give you the questions though. And I can give you some information to help you find your own answers. And that's the unsexy thing. That's the opposite of what most of these leaders in any industry, to be honest with you, are selling. Everybody is selling the mythology, and it's so sexy. And believe me, I wish it were true. I've got the golden ticket. I've got the secret door. I've got the key, the way, the secret, whatever. Follow me and I'll show you too. And this is me kind of going in the opposite direction, which is no, none of these people have that. What they're selling you is the beautiful, comfy, cozy mythology that even exists. Yeah. So instead of I'm not going to give you a formula, but I am going to give you somewhat of a framework to find your own combination of elements. And guess what? The world is going to change, and you're going to change, and you're going to have to do it again. So that's why it's good to have a framework. That's why it's good to know what questions to ask. That's why it's good to have the information, the research, the history, all of that, and the lived experience of going through the process of doing that and figuring that out, because you will do it again and again and again and again and again, right?
Yes. And thank you for saying that, because that's just like healing. It's just like anything else. The minute we think we're done, or there's one way and, oh, I did that, checked that box, something else is just going to come up. So instead, if we can have that understanding that this is a process, you are going to have to go through a bunch of these different things, right? So then welcoming that and understanding what that looks like, as opposed to being frustrated or upset with yourself or whatever it is when you have to do it again, right? Or when you have to work through things again. And I think that even that knowledge, if people had that understanding, like that's a great place to start, right? That there isn't just the golden ticket, like you said, or there isn't the one-time surefire way of knowing or of being. And that expectation, I think then is what, people are buying that hope, right? That this is the last time I'll have to do this. This is the last time I'm going to have to look through things. And I think that speaks to how tired everybody is, right? Everybody.
I want it too. Don't get me wrong. I'm annoyed when I have to it's a spiral, right? And you're as soon as you level up in one level of anything, knowledge or healing, then you're going to come back around again for the next, we're going to go advanced now. We're going to go into the same themes again, but this time with more nuance, and this time you've trod the territory before, so now you got to level up in terms of the intensity. I'm not saying that's necessary, it's always more intense, but it's a spiral. We're going through this evolutionary, cycle where we return to the same themes again and again, and it's annoying. I'm like, I already did this though. Come on. Didn't I get can I get my badge and go do something else? Come on. So,
well,
that's why it sells.
I am really
why.
appreciative of your time and just of your knowledge and your ability to share this and really have these conversations, because I know, especially in your industry, it does make you a target. It means that you're being very vulnerable and authentic with everybody. And I appreciate that, because everybody thinks that a lot of people are out there showing all these facets of themselves and look at how open they are. But then like you said, once you start peeling back the curtain of what it's really going toward, you're like, oh, does she even like chocolate chip cookies? Like, or whatever.
Is she getting paid to eat that cookie? What's happening here? Is that helping her look more authentic?
So how do you, where can people find you? How can people work with you? Or what is the way that you want to continue to help other people then, I guess?
Bringing it all back. I love that. I love the callback. Well, you can find me anywhere internets are sold. I'm Rachael Kay Albers. That is Rachel with an RACHAEL KAYALBERS. That's where you'll find me. I'm pretty much on every platform, because that's kind of one of my approaches to social media. Is it's taking the message and then translating it into different platforms. Because for me, it's not about like being a YouTuber or like being famous on the gram. It's about making sure the message is everywhere it can be, everywhere people are congregating. So you can find me anywhere that internets are sold, or RachelKayAlbers.com. I do work with people one-on-one. That is kind of my signature service through my branding and marketing reinvention studio for businesses that burn the rulebook. That's RKA Inc with a K. So if somebody is in the process of doing a rebrand, for example, and they want to do a real deep dive that's based in their values and, making sure that they're creating a business that is sustainable and in alignment with their beliefs, I do that really well over long-term periods. Or sometimes people just want like a little taste of RK. They just want to like hop on a couple calls with me. And I do that too. So you can find, both of those offerings at those websites that I just dropped, or just like come and chill with me on Instagram. That's my favorite place to hang out. Let's hang. I give a lot of wild content on Instagram, so you can have a fun ride with me, even if you never throw me any bones, even if you never throw any dollars my way. We're still going to have fun.
Yeah, you absolutely do. I love learning from you. And that's really what it is. I'm learning from you. And I think that, for me, as somebody who loves to learn and wants to continue to consume information, right? And that's a space where then too, recognizing that this is a continual learning process. Like you said, the game's going to change, the rules are going to change. So let's not only look at this where we're at, let's look at it historically, and let's think about how we can do better. And, back to your point of somebody saying, well, this is the best it is. Like, when have we ever settled for that? There's always, right? Like, there's always a 2.0 or a next version. Yes. I mean, come on now. So like, that seems like a really bad answer. So again, I appreciate your openness. It's been so fun to chat with you. And now I'm already thinking about all the other things I want to talk to you about that we didn't cover.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Thanks everyone for listening. And thanks again, Rachael, for being here. Bye-bye.
Here are my takeaways from today's episode. Number 1, there will always be coaches or marketers who sell you on the idea that they were sold to. Overnight successes are rare, so let's be aware of the red flags that may be popping up when considering signing up for a course or a coaching experience. Number 2, if you're not seeing the success that you've been silently or not so silently promised from a course, know that you are in the majority. Most people are not seeing the successes, but it's not about anything you did wrong through your experience. It's about misleading projections that were sold to you. Number 3, the stakes are higher now, and with so many having experienced financial hardships, we've become desperate in finding something to save us. At the end of the day, courses are rarely the answer. Number 4, the system is designed to consistently sell us what is next. It is not designed to actually fulfill us and help us succeed. Being aware that there's always going to be something else as an upsell can help us be more mindful of our decisions. Thanks so much for listening today. This conversation may have been uncomfortable in some standpoints, but I feel that it is really one we all needed to hear. See you next week.